boys have woke up the devil.
Colton Briggs? This is Colton Briggs's place?
That's right. And I'm his wife. And you hit me. Shot his horse.
The story kicks off in 1878, Montana Territory, a time and place where Colton's name had become so unknown. Folks probably thought it was another TikTok influencer. But trust me, there was a time, dear viewer, when this man was recognized as the deadliest hitman who ever lived. His reputation was so terrifying. They say he didn't just walk into a saloon. He walked into a saloon and the liquor port itself. However, love is a strange, powerful, and often domestically inclined weapon. Thanks entirely to the formidable influence of his wife, Ruth, who must have been the real baddie of all time, since she tamed him. Colton formally gave his dark past a permanent pink slip. Now, he chooses a serene life, managing a farm where he occasionally glares at the chickens, running a tiny shop where he sells flour and silently judges every customer's poor fashion sense, and devoting himself entirely to his family. And most critically, he's become the full-time, self-appointed bodyguard for his 12-year-old daughter, Brooke, who I think drinks acid instead of water, because whenever she talks, people faints. One morning, Colton was escorting Brooke to school, and from their conversation, it was clear this tiny little Annabella had inherited DNA only from her father. They exchanged conversations the way two unemployed friends make plans to escape the Matrix by doing nothing. The moment they arrived at the one-room schoolhouse, they were greeted by the disappointing news that the teacher was sick, so class was canceled. Brooke was utterly unfazed. A day off just meant more time to practice her steely stare. Colton took her along to the tiny grocery store, the kind of establishment that sold everything from nails to prime. The townspeople greeted Colton with the respect you give a coiled rattlesnake who promised not to bite. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Ruth was tackling the mountain of laundry, perhaps the only thing in her life more intimidating than her husband's past. She was startled by the sudden, dramatic arrival of a group of horsemen. Leading the pack was James, a man who looked like he smelled expensive trouble, along with his colorful posse. Boots, the one perpetually glued to his horse. At first, they just asked for directions to the nearest town, giving Ruth the kind of friendly, disarming smiles usually reserved for a man about to steal your watch. But soon enough, the air turned thicker than week-old gravy. The men started crowding her, their questions becoming less about geography and more about intimacy. Ominous assessment, cornering her near the porch. Realizing she was one polite question away from true peril, Ruth did the only logical thing. She bolted into the warehouse like a startled doe with a master's degree in self-preservation. As James scanned the yard, his eyes landed on a worn saddle hanging in the barn. Etched into the leather was the name, Colton. Upon hearing it, turned a color usually only seen on forgotten corpses.
Colton Briggs? This is Colton Briggs's place?
They were suddenly, gloriously terrified. Ruth, cornered but far from defeated, looked at the men who had just soiled their trousers by association. She warned them, not with a plea, but with a promise.
You boys are in a world of hurt.
She was certain Colton would kill them all, and for the first time, James stopped smirking. Not that he showed fear, mind you. He merely seemed to be calculating the cost of this particular mistake. When Colton and Brooke returned home, they were met with a confusing sight. Several sheriffs had gathered at their house. One of them, a marshal, approached with a serious expression and realized that this was Colton's home, the home of the deadliest shooter the territory had ever known. With a heavy heart, he delivered the shocking news.
I'm sorry, Briggs. We need to talk. Somewhere private.
Colton buried Ruth quietly, mourning deeply. Frank, watching closely, noticed that Brooke didn't show much sadness. Curious, he told her how Colton had once been a feared killer, a man dreaded by everyone around him. Now, seeing him as a family man running a grocery store, Frank was amazed at how much Colton had changed. Is he a good man now? Brooke asked. Frank nodded. Yes, he truly was. Frank also explained that Ruth had been killed by a gang, though he didn't reveal who. Colton's grief quickly turned to a quiet determination. He planned to take revenge. Frank tried to stop him, reminding him that they would capture the gang together with the sheriffs. Back at the warehouse, Colton discovered a threatening message left by the killers. He decided it was time for revenge, and this time, he wanted Brooke by his side. But before leaving, they burned down their house and warehouse, erasing all memories tied to tragedy. Brooke was torn, happy to finally act, yet sad to lose her child at home. After a short rest, knowing the gang had likely fled, Colton and Brooke prepared to continue their pursuit. Meanwhile, Frank and the sheriffs were chasing James, but they were suddenly ambushed. Frank fought valiantly, but his friends were falling one by one. In panic, James and his men eventually retreated, though James was furious at Boots for letting Frank escape. Justice and Mike worried more about Colton, knowing he would hunt them next. After resting, Colton heard gunfire nearby. They quickly set off. Soon, they spotted someone approaching. Colton's plan was simple. He would take the person's horse, while Brooke was supposed to distract them by pretending to cry. Brooke struggled at first, not very convincing, but the plan worked. Later, Colton met up with Frank and the sheriffs who had survived the previous battle. He helped treat their wounds. Frank hoped Colton wouldn't return to his old, ruthless ways. But filled with anger and grief, Colton warned that he would stop anyone in his path to get revenge, even the sheriffs. Seeing the determination in Colton's eyes, Frank told him what he knew. The gang was led by James and included 3 men planning to flee to Santa Rosa, a city near the Mexican border. Armed with this information, Colton grabbed weapons and borrowed Frank's horse, ready to hunt them down. Elsewhere, James and his gang reached their hideout. They found a stash of Mexican currency, not dollars as they hoped. Still, James promised riches if they fled to Mexico, confident that Colton would be hot on their trail. Not long after, Colton and Brooke reached Santa Rosa, a bustling city in Mexico, and settled in for the night. James, always cautious, instructed Eustace to keep watch at the city gate in case Colton appeared unexpectedly. "I'll take the first watch," Eustace said reluctantly. That night, Colton rested and reflected on his life. Frank's words about him being a former debt collector and ruthless killer rang true. Colton had grown up in hardship, never showing emotions, never crying or laughing. But marrying Ruth had changed him, softened him, and that same strength passed on to Brooke. She remained calm even when her mother had died in front of her, now fueled by a burning desire to avenge Ruth herself. The next morning, Colton began training Brooke to use a shotgun. The weapon was heavy and unwieldy, so she switched to a pistol and confidently hit a target, a hat. Meanwhile, in Santa Rosa, Eustace complained to James that no one was guarding the gate while Mike and Boots slept in the hotel. James, growing impatient, told them to stay alert. Colton would come for them. Colton and Brooke reached the city outskirts and saw James' gang waiting. He instructed Brooke to go into town and gather information. Brave and careful, Brooke entered a store and discreetly asked about the gang. But as she left, James and his men spotted her. Recognizing her from her saddle, they quickly captured her, using her as bait, and ordered patrols to watch for Colton. While this unfolded, James revealed his dark motive. He was Jimmy, the son of a thief Colton had killed 20 years ago. For 2 decades, he had planned this revenge, and now his chance had finally come. Colton, sensing danger, moved cautiously into the city. Mike tried to stop him, but was quickly defeated. A tense shootout followed between Colton and Boots, forcing Boots to chase him through narrow alleys. Finally, James used Brooke to lure Colton out. Cornered in a store and seeing his daughter in danger, Colton had no choice but to reveal himself. James reminded him of the past, shouting about his father's death and his long-awaited revenge. A fierce gunfight broke out. Colton was shot in the chest. James rejoiced, believing his revenge complete. With Colton's life slipping away, Brooke finally allowed herself to cry. Soon after, Frank and the sheriff arrived. Initially, Frank considered disposing of Colton's body as a criminal, but he realized the man's actions were driven by love and devotion. Instead, he helped bury Colton properly. Frank then told Brooke it was time to move forward. She could take over the grocery store and carry on her father's legacy. With the money found in James' bag, Brooke would now live independently, honoring her family and the life Colton had built. And with that, the story came to a close.